The world of WWE has been turned completely upside down, as if the very foundation of the company had been ripped apart and rebuilt in the image of chaos. In the midst of fractured alliances, broken bodies, and burned bridges, a monstrous force has returned. Not for glory, not for gold, but for vengeance. The air is different now. It's heavier. It smells of blood, sweat, and fear. And at the center of this storm stands a man not fueled by ambition or championship dreams, but by wrath so intense it shakes the very core of the WWE Universe. Brock Lesnar, the Beast Incarnate, has come back, and this time he didn't come to climb to the top of the mountain. He came to level it. There's a violence to Lesnar's return that transcends even his previous eruptions. This wasn't a surprise entrance to set up a pay-per-view match. This wasn't about putting his name back in title contention or calling out the champion for a future bout. No, this was something entirely different. This was a declaration of war. And the first names etched in blood on the Beast's list? Seth Rollins and Paul Heyman. What unfolded on that chaotic night may go down as one of the most brutal and unhinged sequences in recent WWE history. This wasn't scripted chaos or manufactured drama. This was the unleashing of a primal, unchecked fury that could not be contained. When Lesnar returned, he didn't simply make an appearance. He invaded. He destroyed. He tore through everything and everyone in his way. And when he finally reached the dressing room where Rollins and Heyman had made their nest, it became the site of a massacre. But before diving into the carnage that followed, let's rewind just a bit. Let's take a look at what led to this moment, because the road to destruction is often paved with arrogance and miscalculation. For weeks, Seth Rollins had been weaving his web. Ever the master manipulator, the so-called visionary, had been toying with minds, dropping verbal jabs, orchestrating ambushes, and cultivating unrest. He didn't just want to be the top guy. He wanted to break the entire system and remake it in his image. And for that mission, he recruited a figure whose cunning was matched only by his infamy. Paul Heyman, who had once stood at the right hand of the tribal chief Roman Reigns, shocked the WWE Universe when he seemingly turned his back on the dominant ruler of the bloodline. No one could have predicted the betrayal. After all, Heyman was more than just an advocate to Roman Reigns. He was the strategist behind the dynasty, the architect of the modern-day Samoan Empire. Yet there he was, whispering secrets and strategy into Seth Rollins' ear, smirking backstage, cutting deals behind closed doors. Together, Rollins and Heyman formed an unholy alliance fueled by bitterness and a thirst for power. They believed they had Roman right where they wanted him. Rollins believed that with Heyman's insider knowledge, he could dismantle the bloodline from within. And week after week they chipped away, provoking, mocking, launching sneak attacks from the shadows. Rollins was all confidence, all ego. Heyman played the political game, calling in favors, manipulating narratives, and using his decades of experience to lay the groundwork for Reigns' collapse. But Roman Reigns isn't just a champion. He's not just a title holder or a faction leader. Roman is a strategist, a general, and above all, a survivor. And while Seth and Heyman were busy playing checkers, Roman was quietly setting up a chessboard of his own. His counter-move was brilliant in its simplicity and terrifying in its execution. He made a call, one call, and on the other end of that line was a sleeping giant, a beast in exile, a nightmare waiting for the right moment to strike. That beast was Brock Lesnar. The second rumors began circulating that Lesnar had been spotted near a WWE arena, the backstage environment shifted instantly. The tension became palpable. Superstars who normally strutted with confidence now kept their heads low. Even the production crew walked faster, talked quieter, as if fearing the mere mention of Lesnar's name might summon him. This wasn't just another return. This was a seismic event. Lesnar hadn't been seen in months, and his name had barely been mentioned. But when he returns, the very landscape of WWE changes. And this time, he wasn't interested in holding a championship. He didn't care about WrestleMania main events or record-breaking title reigns. This was personal. This was punishment. The lights in the arena flickered. A chill swept across the crowd. And then it happened. The unmistakable roar of Brock Lesnar's entrance theme erupted through the speakers, cutting through the air like a war cry. The fans roared, a mixture of excitement and unease washing over them. Every fan knew this was no ordinary comeback. And they were right. Lesnar didn't walk to the ring. He stormed through the backstage area like a hurricane. Security scrambled to intercept him, only to be tossed aside like rag dolls. Tables were flipped. Equipment cases were hurled into walls. Lesnar roared for Heyman and Rollins, his voice echoing like thunder through the corridors of the arena. Camera crews struggled to keep up as Lesnar demolished everything in his path. One unfortunate staff member attempted to intervene. Lesnar tossed him into a nearby wall with barely a glance. Finally, Lesnar reached the dressing room door marked Rollins/Heyman. He didn't pause. He didn't hesitate. He simply tore the door off its hinges and stepped into hell. Inside, Seth Rollins had just finished his promo. He was removing his jacket, still grinning from the mockery he had delivered moments earlier. Heyman, seated nearby, was sipping from a bottle of water. Both men froze as the door exploded inward. Time seemed to stop. Rollins didn't even have a moment to react before Lesnar seized him by the throat and hurled him headfirst into a row of lockers. The metal buckled on impact. Rollins crumpled to the floor, dazed and broken. Lesnar didn't let up. He dragged Rollins into the hallway and delivered an F5 onto the concrete so brutal that the sound alone silenced the crowd in the arena. Heyman panicked. He tried to run, tripping over a gym bag, crawling like a worm beneath a table. Lesnar found him. He grabbed Heyman by his collar, dragged him out from under the table, and carried him like prey through the backstage area. Roman Reigns, watching from a monitor, smirked, but made no move to intervene. This was his message, and Lesnar was the messenger. Lesnar entered the ring, Heyman dangling in his grip. With no ceremony, he lifted the man who had once been his advocate and slammed him down with an F5 onto the World Heavyweight Championship belt. Heyman's body convulsed on impact. The crowd gasped. This was more than a beating. This was a ritual of destruction. Medical personnel rushed in. Triple H himself came down to the ring, ordering emergency responders to get Heyman onto a stretcher. Meanwhile, Rollins lay unconscious in the back, surrounded by paramedics, his face bloodied, his ribs likely broken. The shockwaves from that night didn't end there. Backstage, CM Punk was seen watching the events unfold on a monitor. He didn't say much, just one line, a chilling prophecy that now feels all too accurate. Told you karma's a bitch. That wasn't just a throwaway comment. That was a warning. Paul Heyman had made enemies in every direction over his decades of manipulation, and now one of those enemies had returned to collect. But the most unsettling moment of all came not from the carnage, but from the silence. In the shadowy corners of the backstage area, two figures stood watching the entire sequence unfold without a word. Solo Sikoa and Jacob Fatu. They didn't speak. They didn't interfere. They simply observed. Their eyes betrayed no emotion. Were they waiting for Roman's signal? Or were they calculating their own rise to power? The bloodline is no longer a family. It's a ticking time bomb. And Lesnar may have been the one to light the fuse. Seth Rollins, once so smug and self-assured, is now a man hunted. The gold he once flaunted has become irrelevant. Survival is now his only concern. Paul Heyman, once the mastermind behind Roman's throne, is now a broken man. Physically beaten, mentally shaken, his credibility shattered, and Roman Reigns? He hasn't lifted a finger. He hasn't needed to. All he's done is smile, nod, and unleash hell. But there's a deeper threat lurking just beneath the surface. Brock Lesnar isn't a soldier. He isn't a pawn. He doesn't follow orders for long. Roman may have aimed him at Rollins and Heyman, but what happens when the beast sets his sights on the king? Because Lesnar doesn't forget. Lesnar doesn't obey. He acts on impulse, rage, and primal instinct. Today's ally is tomorrow's target. Roman knows this. He's played this game with Lesnar before. And if history tells us anything, it's that the Beast Incarnate always comes back for more at the next live show. Seth Rollins stood in the ring, bruised and bandaged but defiant. Heyman, limping and visibly shaken, stood beside him. Rollins tried to laugh it off, tried to regain his swagger. But when Lesnar's music hit again, all that bravado vanished. Heyman's face went ghost white. Rollins looked around desperately, but there was no escape. Roman stood at the top of the ramp, arms crossed, watching. And then, with a simple nod, he gave his approval. The beast charged. What followed was a repeat of the carnage, but this time even more merciless. Rollins was thrown across the announce table, F5D into steel steps. Heyman was dragged by his tie into the center of the ring and once again slammed onto the championship belt. The fans didn't cheer. They didn't boo. They simply watched, stunned into silence. Roman turned and walked away, smirking. He had made his point. But what happens when the beast no longer serve?